All right, Neil Romano is on the line, former chairman of the National Council on Disability. Neil, how long have you worked on this issue with America's disabled?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on today. It's always a pleasure. I've been involved with, being a person born with a disability and then having had a brother who was a disabled Vietnam veteran. I mean, I've worked in the area, in different areas for a long, long time. But from the point of view of dedicating my life and the full-time effort to people with disabilities, it's been between 25 and 30 years.
Well, I want to thank you for that. I mean, you've been generous with us on issues, and today you were available, and I'm most appreciative. My first thought the other day was, holy cow, they're not saying anything. The population of the Champlain Towers fits the demographic where you're going to have some people that don't have full ability to move in a crisis. The ceiling is coming down. The staircase is coming apart. What was the building like? A 1981 construction code would not have the Americans with Disabilities Act that came later. So what might have been in that building for the disabled, if anything?
Well, as it relates to full structures like that, there are areas of accessibility, but not the kind of areas of accessibility for people with disabilities that we really need. They would be compliant if they had accessible bathrooms, accessible hallways, wide enough for people to get their wheelchairs down, a ramp in the front of the building, et cetera, et cetera. And many buildings, even post-81, prior to ADA, were retrofitted to be accessible. But you're hitting an incredible point. In every disaster, people with disabilities always tend to suffer the most because they are the least likely to be able to get out of disaster. They're the least likely to be noted to be getting out of the disaster, to be able to. It's interesting, you hear, well, if the building starts going bad and everything, make sure you go down the stairs. Well, that's a great idea if you can walk downstairs. But there are so many people who can't do that. We need to look. As we look at building codes and as we look at the future of America, we need to figure out how to make these buildings safe and accessible. Now, hear what I'm saying. For the least capable person to get out of that building. Right. Because if you do that, then you have made it accessible and easier for everyone to get out of that building. This is a terrible tragedy, and, my heart also goes out to, we were talking a little bit on the air. I look further, and, I'm a Brooklyn boy, and I see lots of my friends and neighbors' faces in the folks that we're seeing and the pictures we're seeing, and we certainly offer our prayers to all of them.
Neil, there is nothing, if you are among folks like that neighborhood, that 8777 Collins Avenue, I can't tell you how much I love Collins Avenue because it makes me feel like I'm back home. When they look up at you, the mothers and the grandmothers, they have a certain way they look. When they're there for you, they've got food, they've got hugs, they've got good words and affection for you as far as the eye can see. But when they need you, Neil, the face, the arms, the body posture, that's all I could see last Saturday. That's all I could see on Friday night was the posture. They so need us. And one more thing, Neil, we're in the right demographic to say this. These are the folks that made the society run to this point. They built the roads. They paid the taxes. They suffered all of the episodes in American history to get here. And then to have the law and the construction code and all these things fail them, I just can't imagine if they're disabled on top of that, what the terror is like. How do we make sure disabled people know that they're in our thoughts and plans? How, other than building codes, what's needed, Neil? You're on the front of this issue for so many years. What is necessary for these folks to feel included?
You said something that was terribly important just now. You were talking about the faces of a generation of people who And the only words that you didn't say, but you were alluding to, these are people who cared about other people.
Thank you.
These are people who cared for their families, their children. We don't have enough people who think about those folks, who think about the other guy. We've gone through this Me Too generation thing, and we need to work much, much harder to recognize that all human life is valuable at all times, and to build things and to have things in 2021 that are not recognizing people with disabilities unfortunate. And the way to change that is when you do things like build standards, when you have building departments, when you go through these architectural reviews, you need to include people with disabilities. You need to include them and talk to them about their needs, talk to them about their fears, talk to them about the things that they think about the most. You know, it's the same through everything. It doesn't make any difference if it's sadly a building collapsing in Miami, or it's a hurricane hitting the coast, or if it's a pandemic. People with disabilities, if we think about them first, it's the most important thing we can do, because we're going to be able to take care of everyone that much better.
Neil, fantastic. I mean, really, this is the conversation I knew I would have with you. I thank you so much. You remind me of the rescuers. You remind me of the trailblazers, because this is not an issue that gets a ton of attention until something happens like this, but you're always ready. You're always there for us, like a beacon for people who are so often forgotten. You know, this media is supposed to be very sensitive. They've lost their sensitivity to this issue, maybe to the exclusion of others, but they should come back, circle around for these wonderful people. Thank you for this visit today, Neil.
Hey, thank you very much, and thank you for continuing to put people with disabilities at the front of your agenda.
Absolutely. It will always be that way. John is calling.